Welcome to Liner Notes. My name is David Bixler. My guest today is the singular trumpeter, composer, and master of musical alchemy, Steven Bernstein. On June 5th, Steven dropped a massive double release on Royal Potato Family that looks both forward and backward, capturing a brilliant moment in time and then completely turning it inside out. The first half of this equation is the Steven Bernstein ResoNation Trio, featuring the incredible rhythm section of bassist Scott Colley and drummer Nasheet Waits. Recorded in 2023, it captures the raw acoustic energy of three masters in a room. But the story doesn't stop there. Bernstein handed those session tapes over to legendary producer and sonic architect Scotty Hard, who took the material and completely reimagined it. The result is Ultra Resonance, a masterclass in studio manipulation, groove, and sonic expansion. It's a fascinating look at how the same seed of improvisation can grow into two completely different musical ecosystems. We talk about the genesis of the session, the art of letting go in the studio, and what happens when live chemistry meets production genius. Steve, welcome to Liner Notes. Good to see you this morning.
Thank you, David.
You have kind of a big project. Not only is it a double record set, one is the ResoNation Trio with Scott Colley and Nasheet Waits. And the other is Ultra Resonance, material reimagined by Scotty Hard. They're on Royal Potato. They came out June 5th, though they were recorded in 23. Really cool project, and listeners are going to be interested in this thing. I want to start with the trio record with bassist Scott Colley and drummer Nasheet Waits, and maybe talk about that process. I have some questions for you, but why don't you just talk about how this came about? Because I know this, I believe this is your debut trio record.
Well, here's the deal. I actually had a what we called a collective trio. As my first band, it was called Spanish Fly, and it was with David Tronzo and Marcus Rojas. But that was trumpet, slide guitar, and tuba. So basically three melodic instruments. And I don't know if you're familiar with David Tronzo, but a groundbreaking slide guitar player who was really approaching from a very dyadic approach, as opposed to the way guitar players play, big chords. So it was basically a band of sounds and chords. So it's not my first trio project, but it's the first time I've ever gone and said, okay, acoustic bass and drums, that classic, what people call a saxophone, a tenor trio. And it's also the first time I made a record only playing the valve trumpet. So it's two kind of debut ideas for me, because I've just never made a record playing only valve trumpet, and I've never put myself into that very particular orchestration where, to most people, the trumpet would be considered the solo instrument, and bass and drums are considered, by many people, call a rhythm section. Not that they have to be that, but that's how people often hear it.
Okay. Getting back to the trumpet, I found a quote of yours because you're known for your slide trumpet playing. And this is the quote I found. You can tell me if it's true or if it's fictitious. With the slide trumpet, you have complete freedom. There's not really anyone to compare your sound to. And that lack of comparisons gave me the freedom to not worry much about what other people did before me. So in light of that, you're exposing yourself in this new format, and you're okay, you're saying forget about that. I'm going to just play trumpet, and you play some flugelhorn on that. So what went into that decision?
Well, I'm about to turn 65. I'm a very, as any trumpeter is a professional trumpet player, you have to be very religious about practicing this instrument and playing this instrument. If you don't do it, it's not going to work. So I've been doing this for over 50 years. Wake up every day, practice a trumpet. And I pride myself in my sound and the way I play it. I felt like I really want to document it because it hasn't been documented. I mean, so much of my work has been documented. I've made, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of records. I did a lot of studio. People know my trumpet playing a lot from playing leading sections. And that's a particular style of trumpet playing I've been doing a long time. But I've always had this other way I play the trumpet, and it just hasn't really been documented. And I felt like I really wanted to do it because I've been working on it for a long time, and I think I have a very unique perspective on playing the instrument. And I just felt it was time to do that. But I also felt like I needed to wait until I was really confident that I had something to say that was worthwhile. And I just felt like now's the time to do this. And I feel like I do have a way to play the trumpet that's very uniquely myself. And it is something I've been working on for over 50 years.
Mm-hmm. So, like with this group, did you do some gigs? Did you try out various personnel, or did you just say this is what we're going to do and hit?
No, I always wanted to do Scott Colley and Nasheet Waits. I'd heard them with Andrew Hill, and I've known them all both for a long time. But, I loved the way they would allow Andrew to play and create these worlds around Andrew. I don't know how often or if you ever got to hear Andrew live, but he had a very unique way of improvising, and they really are masters of what people use the word improvisation, but I like the word spontaneous composition. The idea of you're creating compositions in the moment. And so that was always who I want to use. Now those guys, that's what they do for a living. I do a lot of different things for a living. Now those guys, they play that kind of music, and that's what they get called to do. I get called to do, many, many things. I've been a studio musician, uh, a horn section leader, all those kind of things. That's, I've been an arranger, all these different kinds of music I make. So I felt like these guys live in that world, and I'm, in a sense, visiting it, even though I've been living in it in my mind for so long. So I always wanted those two. And I went to Scott's an old friend of mine, and I went to his house, and I played him. We played duet. We just played duet. He said, "What do you have?" And I brought the pieces. And he said, "Man, this is going to be great. Don't worry about it." Because this is what Scott does. Everybody calls Scott Colley to make their record. Everyone calls Nasheet to make their record. We had played one gig. Nasheet was not available. So Nasheet had never played this music until the recording. And I went in there and I told him, "Look, I'm doing this with no agenda. I'm not trying to achieve anything. I just want to play these compositions and improvise on them. Just have a conversation and see where this leads us." And that's what we did. And I brought 20 compositions, and we recorded 20 compositions.
All right. Getting back to the conversation, that is very evident in listening to the recording, that it's, it's not, you talked about the drums and bass being the quote unquote rhythm section, and it's very much, to me, just like three cats hanging out and interacting. And I thought that was very, very, very cool. One thing I did want to ask, I did read that you recorded 20 compositions, and I think, I'm not looking at it right now, that you whittled it down to 10 on
Right.
that recording. How did these tunes make the cut?
Well, it was interesting. When I first was, sending it around to people, I didn't know how to I love them all. And so I said, wow, I love and I felt so bad for my friends who run record labels because I would send them like 20 songs. But I knew I wouldn't know what the record was until Ultra Resonance was done because there were going to be companion records. And it took Scott a long time to finish Ultra Resonance. It was a very long process. So in that process, so that maybe a year and a half passed between when I finished mixing the trio record and Ultra Resonance was done. And in that year and a half, I'm very old school. I was taught to produce by my friend Hal Wilner, so I have a bulletin board with little cards on it with the name of every song and a description of the song. So I kind of know in my head, oh, this is a song that starts with the drums. This song starts with bass. This is a trumpet. Song starts with trumpet. And I would have all 20 cards on it. And I would constantly be making new orders, and usually with 12 songs. But like throughout that year and a half, and I'd make a new order and I'd look at it and listen to it. And then maybe 2 or 3 weeks later or a month later, I'd, make a new order and listen to that. And it kept changing. But the day Scott's record was done, I went home and made a new order in like 5 minutes and said, because I knew that the two records needed to balance each other. And and one of the things I kind of decided was I really wanted to, because Scott's record has so much depth and thickness and motion in it, that I said, okay, let's really celebrate the space. Let's take the songs that really are going to balance that out, because they're definitely recorded more swingers and things like that. And I said, well, you know, let's offer something else. And I also feel that there's so much music that's like that. There's so much music where it's swinging and people are kind of playing eighth notes through it. It would be really refreshing to have music that offers a different perspective.
Very cool. Getting back to the 20 compositions, in reading what you wrote about it, you say that after recording them, it was like sculpting and cutting and shaping until I found the story I wanted to tell. And so, at what level is that happening? Are you actually editing and putting things together, or are you talking about like the tunes, just what you're talking about now, the songs that you chose and the order that they're going in?
No, I'm editing. I'm editing. Though I come from spontaneous composition. Like I was in a band with Peter Alphalm had a band, and we were doing spontaneous composition in ninth grade. I've been doing, you know what I'm saying? I've been, yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
That's a talent
No,
show
we were,
winner in high school, right? Yeah.
yeah. Well, I went to Berkeley High School. We didn't have talent shows. We had concerts.
Okay.
Yeah, we had concerts. We were playing concerts in 10th grade and festivals. And I grew up in a very unique situation because Berkeley was this, center of counterculture. First concerts I went to at Keystone. Listen, Duke Ellington came when I was in third grade. I heard Duke Ellington in third grade. He came and played I wasn't even playing music yet. We started improvising in fifth grade. Phil Hardiman, Herb Wong. I'm sure you know that name. The educate. So Herb Wong had started. He was a principal at that time, or an administrator at Berkeley in the Berkeley schools, and had this dream to start an jazz education for young people. And it was just the first or second year of integration in Berkeley. I moved there in '69, so '72 is when I started improvising, because that's when I was in fifth grade, or '71. And you start improvising then, and we started going to Keystone Corner in seventh grade. So the first concert I went to was Eddie Harris at Keystone Corner. Second concert I went to was Ross and Roland Kirk. This is seventh grade. By 10th grade, I had already seen, Freddie Hubbard multiple times, Ross on multiple times, McCoy, Elvin, Ron, Art Ensemble, Cecil Taylor, Sam Rivers. Maybe that's 11th grade by the time I get to all those people. But, so what I'm trying to say is that I come from a culture of that kind of music. But I also play I'm also an arranger, I'm also a composer, and I've also done a lot of what people might refer to as pop music, because I play with so many people in that world. So I'm very conscious. Like a lot of people are just like the music's the music, right? And you put it out like that. But I'm more conscious about structure. And I feel songs need to be structured. Like people don't, and it's very subtle. I don't know how many people think about it because I've never heard as much stuff people write about me. They never write about that. But for instance, the first Sex Mob record, every single song has a different structure. Now, in most records, it goes like this: head, solo, 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 head. Boom. Now, it wasn't always like that. Duke Ellington surely doesn't sound like that. Horace Silver doesn't sound like that. Horace Silver always had what they don't even use the word anymore. They used to call it a channel. You know, a channel would go in between solos or at the end of a head. And then he would have like a shout chorus and a kicker. You know, songs had structures. Then there's the more kind of abstract structures. If you look at people like Cecil Taylor, that's a very abstract structure, but it is structure. And I'm really a lover of structure. So what I do is I take these improvisations and I edit them down to a structure that makes sense to me. It makes it to me more listenable and more clear what the message of the song is.
Very interesting.
But the songs are improvised.
Yeah,
Do you know what I'm
yeah.
saying? The songs are improvised. And then I create the structure afterwards.
Okay. Very cool. All right. So let's jump to the second part. It's described as conjoined musical twins, which I thought was kind of cool. You handed over the completed record to a longtime collaborator, Scotty Hard. And it sounds like he put the things in a blender and created 8 more pieces that are based on all the material from the recording. And it sounds like you added a little bit and then he played a little bit and then there might be an extra percussionist on it. Maybe talk about, how these, I'm sure that you can hear everything and, someone would have to be very intimate with the knowledge of the trio record to know where everything shows up. But maybe talk about the relationship between these things. And did you just give him free reign? And
I gave him free reign, but actually what I did was I gave him the entire recording. I gave him all 20 pieces.
Okay.
So it's actually, for instance, there's a piece called Tighten-O. It's kind of the most, I would say, a clear of the piece. It's the one that's most sounds like this. It's basically a bass line and a drum beat and the trumpet. And it's the only piece like that. And that's actually a piece that's not on the record that I really liked. And I said, oh, this would be a great piece for Scotty to just do a version of. And but I kind of forgotten that he completely changed it. Like I thought he would just do like because it's very much like a groove piece, like a Don Cherry kind of Alice Coltrane kind of groove piece. And I said, oh, that's gonna be really cool. Let Scott do his thing. And we went back and listened to it afterwards with the trio at rehearsal. I said, let's do this piece. And Scott had taken the piece and completely like changed the bass line. Like the first half of because it was basically a 5-beat bass line, and he took it and extended it into like an 8-beat bass line and just made the melodic part of the bass line much longer. And I kind of didn't even realize that, but yeah, I gave him everything and said, and I gave him complete freedom, but I would say like, oh, hey, this little drum part, why don't you make something out of this? This is a really cool drum beat. Or this bass line, man, why don't you do something with that? Or I really, but he would just do things I would never expect, and even some things that I thought sounded really weird, and I'd be like, okay, well, this is what Scott wants to do. Let's see where this goes. And one of the things I've learned as I've gotten older is that just because I don't like something doesn't mean it's not good. It just means I haven't heard it yet. Like Lou Soloff told me something really amazing once. We were on the road together, and he said to me, Steven, you know when you hear a recording of yourself and something makes you really uncomfortable? He goes, that's the way you play. And the way I interpreted that, and I'm not sure it's what he meant, but to me as a young man was like, if I hear myself playing some slick thing I learned from Clifford or from Lee or Miles, I go, yeah, that's slick. But if I hear something I'd never heard it before, I go, oh, what's that? Well, that's you, man.
That's very interesting. With Hard, is there a equal ratio, like one cut becomes another piece, or is he mixing different tracks and pieces of them together?
Both. There are pieces that are directly relate melodically to one piece. Like he might just take but he's just so amazing. Like there's one piece where he just takes the melody, and it's almost like he worked with Tio for a long time. It's very interesting because he worked with Tio, and he worked with all the Wu-Tang Clan and Prince Paul and De La Soul and all those people. So Andy's I believe he got a composition degree. He went to music school. He was a great guitar player and very interested in modern composition. So Tio really loved him because his ears were so big. And he takes this long melody, and every time it comes, it's just maybe a third lower. But you don't really recognize it because it just seems like it just keeps happening. And then you notice, wait, now it's really at the bottom of the horn. Wait, that's lower than the horn. And you'd be like, oh, right. Every time this melody, he would just, nothing is untreated. And there are, I'm sure, times where he's taken, I know for sure there's times where he's taken like one thing from one piece and one thing from another piece and created something new. But just it takes a very long time, like for him, the process is he builds the track. It's not like now where everyone puts everything like in Pro Tools and it's done, I'm not quite sure how he does it, but he builds all what he calls like the track very organically. So it like takes basically sometimes 2 weeks to build a track or a week. And then after the track itself is built, then he starts adding things to it. But first you need to build your bed from zero, So it's basically the opposite of the record. I always tell people the record's just like folk music, man. It's just 3 guys on the porch just playing a tune. You do it, not one and done, 2 and done,
The ultra resonance is challenging and rewarding to listen to. I mean, you got to be all in. And it was interesting because I was actually upstate and listened to it in the car, like coming back, and then listen to it again, like on headphones. And you can
you can't get it in a car.
Yeah.
You can't hear it because there's so many subtle layers.
Yeah.
As a person who listens in a car a lot, you're gonna actually miss 75% of the record in the car.
Yeah, there's so many layers, and it really it's very hypnotic. The grooves are just so varied, and also it's you're just so imaginative with the sounds that he comes up with.
It's very specific, like every sound is really, and we know what would happen is he'd build a track and we'd hang out and, I did have, he always says, well, you have 3 good ideas. The truth is I had more than 3 good ideas, but, I'd
You
sit
need
there
friends like
'cause
that, man.
but, like, so because he would add something and I might say, "Oh, yeah, that doesn't need to happen so many times." Like, because he'd find some little magic thing and he'd put it in. I'm like, "Yeah, that's cool, but we don't need that many of that." Like, like we need a third of that sound or I'd say, "Oh, that's a really great melody you put there. Let's bring it back," or "Let's put that melody at the be," you know, we've all come up with Miles and Tio, and we're also aware of the power of, making sure melodies are heard at the beginning of a song and the end of a song to kind of give something that's abstract a structure. There's a real power to that, and it's subliminal. People don't realize it, I mean, I really learned it, when I would play Bitches Brew because I performed Bitches Brew for the first time. I did it recently, but the first time about 12 years ago, and the guys were like they were Italian guys, and they said, "Oh, man, we just want you to play, do your thing." I'm not I'm really into knowledge. My whole thing is there's no such thing as too much knowledge, and I've always been studying things. So I said, "Well, let me write out. I'm not gonna play what Miles plays, but let me at least write it out so I know what it is." So I'm just kind of like I'm not writing in bar lines. I'm just kind of writing, I'm not like putting all the measures rest. I'm just kind of like, okay, there's this phrase, and he plays this phrase, and he plays this phrase. And I get to about the third page, and I'm writing. I go, wait, I kind of remember writing that. And I look at it, and look, wait, page one has the exact same phrasing. And I say, that's impossible. Nobody would like play, you might play the same melody, but you wouldn't play it. And I realized, oh, this is the same melody. Tio just put it again at the end. But you don't know that when you listen to it because, like I said, jazz music, what do when you play around midnight? You play the melody, well, you play the intro, and you play the melody once, and then everyone solos, and you play the melody again. It's gonna be pretty much the same. Boo doo boo beep beep, boo beep. But, not exactly the same. But when I looked at it at the writing at like, oh, here's an eighth note rest, here's a chord note rest, here's a dotted quarter note, held that note. I realized, oh, that's just the same melody, like the same melody, not a similar melody. And I thought it really kind of opened up a door to me, like, oh, wow, that's a real powerful way to do things. Nobody knows this. They just think he's playing the same melody. He didn't play the same melody. That was some sort of jam, and Tio created a structure.
You have some release gigs for this project. Now, will the electronic component factor in? Will Hard be there in real time?
He'll be there, but we're not going to do the electronic stuff on this one. We are going to do a show of the electronic music in October at the Stone. Um, yeah, it's funny thinking now I realize it would have been great to do that. And I don't quite know how we're going to do it. And the closer I get to it, the more I go like, I think what we're going to do is we'll play the record, before and after as people are in the room. It would have been good to find out. I just don't quite know yet how that would be done. I kind of wish, though, honestly, that I had tried to figure that out now. I was thinking, God, it would have been kind of cool to do something like that,
All right. I saw that you have maybe the initial gigs are coming up this month, and this will be
No, they're this week.
This week, right? So
This week.
my point is, this will be released after that. But the gigs of the Stone are when?
So the gigs of the Stone are October 28th and 29th.
Okay.
29th is going to be Ultra Resonance with Scott Harding.
Okay, cool. So listener, check that out. And then before I let you go, what else is coming up? Is there going to be a round two? Have like with this trio?
Well, I'm sure we'll tour. I'm sure we'll get to Europe and maybe some jazz festivals. I mean, it's very interesting because it's really listening music. And, so much of the clubs now in New York are, people eat hamburgers and things like that. And I don't think it's really hamburger eating music or like, I mean, I'm not saying that in a bad way. I play plenty of hamburger eating music. I just don't think this is. And so, I need to find, but we're going to play this, like, there's a beautiful spot called Tempo up in Kingston. We're going to do it there. And there's a spot in my town in Nyack, a beautiful church that they do performances in. So I think I need to find spaces like that to do it. But it's a kind of busy summer for me in general. Like this Friday, I'm in tour with Laurie Anderson. We just put out X equal X with Sex Mob and Laurie Anderson. So like it's interesting, David. You've been a professional musician for a long time, right?
Hmm.
How many years?
Well, I've been in New York. It'll be 40 years next year.
I can't believe we haven't
Yeah.
met. That's crazy. Um, so you know what it's like. I in January and February, it was so slow. I was like, maybe my career's over. I had a good one. That's cool. And now, no, seriously, I wasn't that bummed out about it. I was just like, well, okay, well, it happens. And now it's like this crazy run of stuff. So I have Laurie Anderson with Sex Mob at Central Park. The next day, my record release. Then the record release in Philly. Then Sex Mob at Hampton's Jazz Festival. Then to Europe with Laurie and Sex Mob. Then to SF Jazz with Sex Mob, doing 2 brand new programs of music, playing Sex Mob. It's all tribute to the Bay Area. Like, so Sex Mob plays psychedelic music from the Bay Area with Liberty Elman on guitar, and then 2 nights of Sex Mob playing Bay Area Latin Soul with John Santos. Yet it just kind of keeps going. There's more Laurie work. There's the one thing I don't have for this year is I had some really nice work with the Millennial Territory Orchestra earlier. We played Big Ears with my Sly Stone project. So we're gonna be playing at the Pocket, which is the new club in New York.
Oh, yeah.
We'll
Yeah,
play
yeah,
there.
yeah.
We have upcoming gig there with the Millennial Territory Orchestra. We'll do a weekend there. So it's it's definitely a busy time, and I'm super grateful for that, because as you know, you just don't know in this world. And I have gigs. I've been doing the Midnight Ramble, which was Levon Helm's band. Been doing that for coming up to 22 years up in Woodstock. So yeah, we'll come up to the 22nd year of that. And as you know, having a gig for 22 years is I mean, my bands have been together forever because that's for me. I mean, I've had Sex Mob for 30 years. I've had Millennial Territory Orchestra for 25 years. But I've been playing in Levon's barn like for almost 22 years. Like in that barn, we drive up that barn on the weekend and play some good music.
That's really cool. Steven, thank you for your time. The music is ResoNation Trio and Ultra Resonance on Royal Potato. Check it out. It's very cool. I mean, for a lack of minutes, that's not very superlative.
Well, no, but it doesn't need to be superlative because as you can tell, like my music is about trying to keep things beautiful, and it doesn't need to be superlative. But as a professional musician, what do you think? I would be interested. Like, what do you think of it as a trio record? Like, because you grew up with trio records, being a saxophone player.
No, I thought it was, during the pandemic, like I came to New York. I went to Indiana University. I was like a hardcore bebop cat, and then had been slowly moving left over my time here. And during the pandemic, formed a trio. It was Trio Incognito. We'd done a couple records. And, so, I mean, I'm much more interested now. I mean, I love that music and I always will, like just playing changes and tunes, whatever. But the space and more of the, like when you don't have a 32 bar cage sometimes, or a or a time continuum grid. Let's call it that. Yeah, cage is kind of a pejorative.
Exactly.
Or like a necessarily like a time continuum. That is much more interesting. Like, you can pivot based on what someone's throwing in the conversation, and that's what I thought was really happening, like with you guys. Like there was like, no, I mean, like people like step maybe to the forefront at certain times, but it was never like, okay, it's the trumpet solo now it's the bass solo. It was just like you said, like cats, you said porch. I always think about it when it's really happening. It's just like friends having a conversation, and you don't have a script. Like, okay, you're going to tell a joke and we're all going to laugh. That's what's going to happen next. That doesn't happen, And so, like, I think the naturalness of, I think you obtained what you were trying to obtain from another musician. I'm telling you this.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So, that means a lot, man. That really means a lot. So I appreciate that. All right, man. Well, hey, do me a favor. Send me some links, or at least the names of your favorite Trio records, and I'll have an opportunity to check it out.
Okay, sounds good, man.
Thank you,
All
brother.
right, bro. Be good, man. Peace.
Be good.
Liner Notes is grateful for the support of Van Doren Reeds and Mouthpieces. Be sure and check out the Van Doren Advisory Studio in New York City for all your sound sculpting needs. Liner Notes is grateful for the support of Arlen's Good Beer in Bowling Green, Ohio. Engineered by Marco Mendoza. Visit his website at engineeredbymarco.com. The theme music is recycled from my 2025 release, Incognito Ergo Sum. Produced by David Bixler. Be sure and subscribe to Liner Notes wherever you find your podcasts. If you like what you hear, I ask that you consider supporting Liner Notes financially. You can do this by going to the Liner Notes tab at davidbixler.com. Thank you for your consideration.